Good morning, Arizona.
Доброго ранку, Arizona. Welcome to our podcast called Sunflowers
And Saguaros.
One of us grew up around sunflower fields.
The other hiking between saguaros. Between us, we hope to strengthen the bridge between Arizona and Ukraine, one conversation at a time.
Between Sunflowers and Saguaros podcast is hosted by me, Olya Johnson, a Ukrainian-American community member and volunteer.
And me, Andrew Ripley, an Arizonan who fell into Ukrainian advocacy through friendship and never looked back.
Each month, we sit down with people who live this story, veterans, artists, refugees, educators, local leaders, people who know what it means to carry two places in their heart.
This is our podcast.
And it is yours as well.
Гаї шумлять, я слухаю, хмарки біжать, милуюся, дивуюся, чого душі мої так весело.
This is exciting.
And welcome.
Our very first podcast. You excited?
Yes, and a little bit nervous, actually. Never done one before.
It's nice that it's not in front of a live studio audience, I'll say that much.
That's true.
All right, so before we really get into things, I want to cover, since this is our first podcast, kind of what a typical format, although today may not quite be typical since it's our first. So we will have normally like a guest or a main topic that we'll go through, or maybe even something zany like a game show. We'll cover different other kind of smaller segments as well. We like to host a question of the month from the community. We have a little small segment we're calling Sunflower or Saguaro. And then we'll also cover major developments in Ukraine, although I want to caveat this. We're not a war podcast. That's not what we're going to really be spending much of our time on. But we are interested in how this affects the human toll and the lives of our listeners. And then we'll also probably almost always close with recent and upcoming events, things that we've done recently. There's a lot going on here in the Valley, as well as a lot of things coming up, and we love to invite people to participate and have fun and join in the community.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about who we are and what we do in our real life and now, I guess, in our public life as well. Andrew.
Yeah, so I think for today, the main thing we want to talk about is just getting to know us, our perspectives, what we're bringing to the show. So I think maybe if we both just start with just a little high-level information about us.
All right, probably ladies first, right?
Yeah.
My name is Olya Johnson. I am an American-Ukrainian first-generation immigrant. I came here into the United States in 2004. My real life, I am a business consultant focusing on financial and leadership consultancy for the businesses and financial institutions. But where my real passion is advocating on behalf of Ukraine, especially since 2022. Andrew.
All right. Well, so I'm not a Ukrainian. I'm an American. In fact, I wasn't actually even born in Arizona, but I've lived here in my youth, and also more recently we decided to come back. So I am also a family man. I've got a daughter, and by day I work in software development. That's my closest connection to Ukraine. Is actually a good segment of of my colleagues live in Dnipro, but a little bit more scattered now with the war and everything. And if I get free time, my favorite things to do are things like playing board games, going on a hike, that type of stuff. So, Olya, why are you here?
Well, to record a podcast about Ukraine and connect it with Arizona.
Yeah, but why? Like, why?
I started learning about Ukraine, believe it or not that long ago, around 2014 and 2018. That's where I found my identity as Ukrainian. And now learning so much about Ukraine, not what I've heard before about how small culture it is. It is just pretty much a primitive folk culture, and that is it. learning about its deep culture, deep in great history, in so many parts and aspects of world history as well. It is so fascinating. And I don't know, like I'm a family person as well, and I have 2 children. And probably if you know your little children, they come back from the first grade and it's like, Mom, Dad, what did we learn? Do you know what we learned? 5 + 5 is 10. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. That is similar for me, learning about Ukraine. I want to share that with all of you as well. It is so fascinating and so interesting. So what about you, Andrew? Why are you here? By the way, did you know that it was your actual idea to create this podcast, not mine?
I'm still going to blame you.
All right.
But in real life, or for the real reason, it was actually something that you did that made me come to the conclusion that led me here.
Oh, wow.
So
what is it?
The Ukrainki series, I believe
Ukrainki
series. So this was Cactus and Tries Up does lots of events, and I've been going to a lot of them. And this series was really interesting to me because it was very, it wasn't like very academic, but it was like learning about cultural and historic, mostly women, from Ukraine's history. And it was fascinating to me because in my upbringing, with my education, we didn't learn anything about Ukraine. And I came to the realization that, before I started working with Ukrainians and going down the Ukrainian rabbit hole, I think the only things I knew were from the headlines. I don't even know. Well, for sure I knew about Crimea. And of course, now with the war, that's a headline. But those are probably the 2 things I think most Americans would think of when they think of Ukraine. And Ukrainki series was very different for me because it taught me a lot of, what happened thousands of years in Ukraine that helped galvanize cultural identity and those types of things. And that really stuck with me because it's like the difference between, actually knowing your neighbor and talking to them. You care about them. And once we understand like what England's all about or what France is all about. As Americans, though, they have cultural identity. But all Ukraine has for us is headlines. And to me, I wanted to help change that.
Well, thank you. For those of you who do not know Andrew has become a big part of our volunteer organization, Cactus and Tries Up. By volunteering his expertise, his time, and his passion, he is one of those few people who actually holds us together when you think no one cares about it and no one is interested about that. By being there, asking and supporting us, he done so much already to develop our community. Thank you, Andrew, for that.
Thank you for saying that.
Well, again, as you mentioned, you are not related to Ukraine by no means. Why Ukraine? What made you to stick with us? What made you to come in every single time and ask questions and learn about Ukraine? From what I know, you're actually learning Ukrainian now. Is that right?
Yes, tak.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to quiz you on that. Did you know? Just be ready.
Yeah, so it started with my work colleagues, and then really kind of the tipping point was one day I met a Ukrainian in real life, and I realized I couldn't say anything. I couldn't even say hello. And I just felt shamed by that. I've here been working with Ukrainians for a couple of years, but I just always saw the language as, so daunting. And so I came home and I fired up Duolingo, and I started learning the language. And that's really what led me down this path. And then, I met the folks at Cactus and Tries Up, started volunteering, doing some advocacy work. And then I came into just more and more, and I met my teacher and, started learning Ukrainian beyond Duolingo. And it's been a fantastic experience. But I think for me, obviously, like, one of the reasons I'm here is to help hopefully bring an end to the war, help bring awareness in Arizona, but in the United States as well, advocacy. But once that's all done, hopefully soon, I won't leave. The community here is fantastic. The people here are amazing. And I think that's really, been a joy.
Thank you.
So, I want to switch it back to you. And I'm just curious. So you kind of alluded to this earlier, and your life is very different from what I think most Americans can even really conceptualize, or at least it's hard for me. So you were born, I think of you as Ukrainian, but you were born in Soviet Russia, right?
Soviet Union, Soviet Ukraine.
So what was that like? Can you walk us through how you from childhood in Soviet Union to the revolution and all that stuff? What was that like?
Thank you for asking this question. It is so interesting. Now, reflecting back, being on this earth for almost 50 years, I'm reflecting back and, oh my gosh, I was so lucky to see so many epic events. From Chernobyl tragedy in 1986, I was living a little bit over 120 miles away from it, seeing the collapse of Berlin Wall, of the Soviet Union, proclamation of independence in Ukraine, multiple revolutions in Ukraine in fight for its democracy. Then moving in here, completely changing my worlds here. Again, I am the first immigrant from my family that came here into the United States and built my life here as well. And then seeing all these epic events that are happening right now as we speak. One of these days, when I'll be old, 200 years old, I will write a book probably about that, but not right now. So I was born in the Soviet Union, and my formative years until I was a teenager, I grew up in the Soviet Union. And if you can picture what it is exactly what it is, a gloomy, depressed, hopeless time when you do not want to talk about your self-identity. You're just one out of the masses. You want to blend in. You do not want to pop up so no one pays attention at you. You just do what you do. Little food, endless lines, and hopeless. If any generation could be described as hopeless, that's probably generation of my parents. Because again, there was nothing to look forward. You just lived through your life. Came independence of Ukraine in 1991, totally confusing. No one knew what to do. It is like suddenly the cage is open and they tell you, okay, go ahead. But you lived in the cage and you do not know what to do with that. You do not know what to do with this freedom. Lots of confusion, lots of all together, but definitely no self-identity. Again, I was just one of people. Met my husband, my future husband. He is American, and in the search of opportunities and better life for our children, we moved back into the United States of America. Both of us were able to get jobs and started from scratch. In fact, our story together is the story of many immigrants and pursuit of happiness that people are going here into the United States. We moved here. We had, between two of us, $500. That's all our savings. My husband was a Peace Corps volunteer. I was a teacher at the university. Poor, very, very poor. We moved here and we started our life here. Our children were born here. We built our careers and hopefully a future for our children as well. Anyway, when people were talking about me, when people were talking about asking where I'm from and what did I do, I did not self-identity until 2014. And in 2014, that is when the revolution of dignity happened in Ukraine. When suddenly young people, younger than I am, stood up and asked, we want to be Europeans. We want to be Ukrainians. We do not want to be part of Russia. We do not want to be part of Soviet Union empire or any other empires. We are Ukrainians. And that is when I started discovering Ukraine for myself. And finally, in so many years, I got self-identity. I am a Ukrainian, not Russian, not Slavic. I am a Ukrainian.
That's extremely powerful. It's interesting, because again, as I go down this rabbit hole, there's so many things that I just don't think about, you kind of assume everyone else's experiences are like your own, and that's certainly nothing like my own. But when I reflect on it, it's what America was now 250 years ago, right? We were under, I don't know how to compare it, but under, British rule. And, they, similarly had a revolution, but, like rewind the clock, many people back then still wanted to be British. And it was, very different from now, where everyone here has maybe a more firm cultural identity. And it's interesting, like that dignity, what is it, the Revolution of Dignity?
Yes.
Was a galvanizing event. It even felt all the way over here after you'd moved your life away, and you'd been here for almost 10 years, give or take.
Yes, you're right. Well, Andrew, let me ask you a question. From what I know about you, you are Arizonian, but were you native born in Arizona, or did you move in here? And what made you move in here? Tell a little bit more about yourself. And also, I know I met your parents. They're such sweet people with huge experience, international experience, traveling around the world. How did that shape you and your perception about the world, about different cultures, and your perspectives living here in Arizona from this international standpoint?
All right. So no, I'm not a native Arizonan. I was born actually in Ohio, and it's kind of funny. Before we moved here, we took kind of the great family vacation, kind of like a Griswold's National Lampoons kind of thing, where we all got in the car for 2 weeks and we drove all the way out west because my dad loved Westerns. And we visited my aunt in Tucson, and we came up to, she'd moved to Phoenix by then because she was in Tempe. And it had reached a record high of 123 degrees. I looked it up. That's 50 degrees Celsius. Wow. And we left and we thought, boy, we'll never be back. And a year later, my dad got an amazing job offer, and here we are. So that was around early 90s as well, 7th grade. And so I lived here, then went off to college, putzed around a bit, met my wife, moved across the country again. I was looking at it the other day, and I realized I've lived in 6 states, but I've lived on both coasts. I've lived on our northern border a couple times with Minnesota and Ohio, and I've lived on the southern border several times with Arizona, California, Texas twice, and Arizona, of course, twice. So it's been an interesting trip. If you can count a couple things I draw exception to, we've actually lived in about nine different states. So I say this because it is interesting, because I've seen a lot of America, and, America has very interesting differences depending on where you are, even one state over, differences between Arizona and California. And anyway, so I think about that too, like with Ukraine as well. As I learn more, Ukraine is the largest country that's fully in Europe, and those types of things are true there as well.
It is so interesting. When I was in college back in Ukraine, my first degree was actually English language and English literature. Obviously, we were studying about United States of America, Great Britain. And if you would ask anybody who knows about anything about the United States, it would be like, well, there is this America. And the assumption is, okay, like you're from America, so how is New York? Without even knowing that, have you ever been to New York or not? Yet, when I came here, I kind of had this idea like that's America, right? And I did not realize how vibrant and different part of America altogether, kind of similar as Ukraine as well. There are different parts of Ukraine, and we have our different dialects, different pronunciations, different cultural traditions, you name it. Tell a little bit more. What was your impression about going from one part of the United States into another? Obviously, it's hot. But if you can compare and put some maybe generalizations, what would you say about Arizona versus Midwest, Ohio?
So
cultural difference.
It's actually changed quite a bit. So now, like, my first impressions are different than my impressions now. If you come to Phoenix now, it is a multicultural epicenter. Like it's a big city. We have lots of events that come here. We have tons of tourists. And the city is just built to impress. It's really good for visitors, and tourism is a huge thing here. When I was younger and we first came here, my impressions were very different. And obviously it was hot, but it was also very, it didn't feel mature. Leaving my home in Ohio had restaurants, and it just felt like culture, and things had been there for decades or even hundreds of years. And, everyone knew these things. Arizona, everything was new. There's very few family-owned restaurants where I lived. My house was like the fifth house in the block, and we used to play in all the houses being built. Now it's blocks and blocks and blocks of houses for 15 miles past where we lived. So the valley's developed quite a bit since then, and it's really changed. One other thing that's interesting, a lot of people from the Midwest came to Arizona, but also people from other places, especially places where they have snow like Minnesota. And one thing I did observe back then, we do have a bit of a dialect here. I call it the Arizona mumble.
What?
Yeah.
First time I ever hear it.
Now, I don't know if this is factually true. We have to ask a professor, but this was at least something I heard or had talked to people about back in the time, was just that we all had come from different places in America with different accents. And so as you got here and became more assimilated, you just kind of toned down everything and started to mumble.
Am I
or
mumbling?
It's just so hot you don't want to spend any extra effort enunciating. I'm not sure, but that was the rumor at the time. All right, so language. I'm fascinated by this because as a what am I, 46 now? As a 46-year-old, I've started learning a language.
Good for you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. It's been interesting, for sure. But I'm curious because this is also another thing that's very foreign, almost alien to me in my brain. As an American, it's just always been English. You have to take a different language in high school or college, but it's always seen as secondary. But for you, and for many Ukrainians, your mother tongue was Russian, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And you've learned English, and Ukrainian you were exposed to, but it wasn't predominantly spoken at home, right?
Correct.
And so what is that like? And now your people over there are switching, right? My colleagues, I talked to them, and it's Kate was telling me that people, in Dnipro used to be, you'd walk around, and if you were speaking Ukrainian, people would either look down on you or they'd kind of switch to Russian. And now it's the opposite over there. And so what is that like? To me, it's so, how do you even do that? How do you switch the language that's in your head? You know what I mean?
There is a saying, I saw it somewhere, that if you live around a different culture, and this culture is speaking non-native, different language, probably you're a colony. And that's what happened in Ukraine. For many years, in fact, I was speaking Russian and English later on until 2014. That I started learning Ukrainian and learning how to speak Ukrainian roughly in 2008 here in the United States, because I met wonderful people from western part of Ukraine, two my good friends, and I fell in love in their language, how they spoke. Was so beautiful, and it's oh my gosh, I know my grandmother used to talk like that. I want to learn how to speak Ukrainian as well. And first I started talking Ukrainian with them, and then in 2014, and especially in 2022, when the war started, full-scale war started in Ukraine, I switched to Ukrainian. In fact, I do not speak Russian now at all. The way when I grew up, you can definitely see a divide between city and the village. My grandparents were from the village. My parents lived in the city because that is where the opportunity, that is where the employment is. And if you want to get a good job, if you want to go to college, you have to speak Russian. You have to be fluent in Russian, and everything comes in Russian. In fact, Ukrainian was considered to be kind of a secondary, non-educated people dialect. Little did I know that that is not true, and Ukrainian language is such an ancient language. But anyway, when I was going back to village to see my grandparents, they would be speaking Ukrainian just because that's the language they spoke, not because they were trying to prove something or make a point. They were speaking Ukrainian. They knew Ukrainian. And now, from the perspective of my years, now I understand that speaking Ukrainian for me is another part of self-identity, because language is like a DNA. It brings your culture, it brings your history, it brings your ancestry back to present and hopefully in the future.
So for me, when I think, I just think in English. I know some people think in pictures, and there's a lot of ways that our brains work, but do you think in English now? Or how does your brain work?
That depends. When I am in my full-time job in my career, talking about finance, I speak English only. In fact, I think I would be struggling to translate this into Ukrainian or Russian or any language, because I learned finance when I was here in the United States, and that is the only language I can think of. Ukrainian-wise, it was very interesting experience. A couple of months ago, I was doing professional translation to the Ukrainian delegation in here, and it was so interesting because I even did not distinguish what language I would think. It would be such an automatic switch between Ukrainian or English. You talk to me Ukrainian, I'm perceiving everything, I'm translating straight into English without even thinking, oh yeah, that's English, or no, it's Ukrainian. It is such bizarre experience, which I'm very, very thankful for that. But speaking of Ukrainian, my husband, when he was a Peace Corps volunteer, he was actually studying Russian, and I helped him to learn Russian as well. When the full-scale war started, I told him, you know what, I'm not going to talk Russian with you at all anymore. And he learned Ukrainian. Now it is our secret language when we want to talk about kids or their grades and what they have done. We switch automatically into Ukrainian and talk about them in front of them. They hate it, but that's what we do now.
My parents kind of did something similar. So my parents, they were actually also Peace Corps volunteers.
Where did they go?
They were in Sierra Leone for a couple years.
Wow.
And so they spoke, so they both spoke, I think it was French, which was somewhat spoken there, but kind of same thing when they got to the villages, they had to learn a whole new language, Mindi, which is, very, very different sounds and more guttural and just different sounds that we don't make. And one of the funniest stories my sister and I realized as adults, my parents basically passive aggressively venting frustration on us, but we thought it was just, they would do what we call suck teeth. And we learned, my mom later was talking at a church group or something, and she was telling people, oh yeah, this is like basically the worst thing you can say to somebody over there, which is roughly equivalent to like, you're not a nice person. And so my parents would be, whenever we would do something all the time. And I do that with my daughter now. It's just instinctual, but it's what was interesting about the speech is that was like the worst thing they could say about someone is you're not a nice person, But
I want to learn that. Okay, I need that. Like, you teach me, okay? No, I'll ask your mom.
All right. So I got one last question for you. I'm curious, like when you came here, obviously, like, maybe there's a difference between when you first came here and when you came here now. But like, what are people's, like when you tell them Ukrainian, what is the reaction? What's their perception of being Ukrainian? Maybe not like another Ukrainian, but like, when you meet an Arizonan or somebody like that, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm from Ukraine. What do they think? What do they say? What do they ask?
People ask me this question often. You might have noticed I have a slight accent. Just kidding. People ask me a lot, and the perception has changed. Obviously, the 2022 impacted that a lot. But probably if I would generalize, there are multiple categories I can generalize. One of the biggest misconception before 2022 was like, oh, wow, Ukraine, where is it? Is it part of Russia? And for a long time, it was hard for me to explain, like, Ukraine actually is the biggest European country by land, if not count Russia, because Russia is partially in Europe, partially in Asia. But Ukraine is the biggest country by land, and yet little do we know about that. So people would ask, like, oh, where is it? And my go-to answer would be like, wow, it's sandwiched between Poland and Russia. That was before 2014, before I started identifying myself who I am. Another question that people would often ask is, oh, are you Russian? Just because I'm tall, Slavic, European-looking person, they would ask, are you Russian? And again, for many years, I would say, like, yeah, whatever, like, call me Russian, whatever, I don't care. And that was very hard to explain. No, I'm not Russian, I'm Ukrainian. And also misconception that every single Ukrainian should be looking as a tall, blonde, blue-eyed woman. That is a huge misconception as well, because we are not. The millennia of multiple wars, multiple invasions put its print on Ukrainian DNA. Now, Ukrainian would look tall and blonde with blue eyes, dark hair, red hair, curly hair, short, brown eyes, dark-skinned. We are all Ukrainians, because Ukraine is not about DNA anymore. It is self-identity with the culture. And Ukrainian culture nowadays has deep roots in the history, but it also has so many different shades and different aspects from different cultures as well. From Turkey, Ottoman Empire had huge impact on that. From nomad tribes that were coming from Persia, lots of that as well, that is in the language, in the tradition. Balkans, Vikings, all of that has been absorbed and became Ukraine as we are, and Ukrainians as we are.
You mentioned Vikings, and I just quickly want to note, I believe your name, Olya, is...
Olga.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that blew my mind. There probably needs to be a whole other episode on it. But yeah, I thought, how did Vikings end up in Ukraine? You look at the map and it's not possible, right? But back then they could carry their boats. And so when it would get cold, instead of going around to the west, they went to the east, carried their boats, they got to the rivers and...
To one of the biggest rivers, the Dnipro River, and that Dnipro River would be called actually the route from Vikings to Byzantine.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's there's Olegs and Olyas and
yes.
Many Viking cultural I don't know what you call them, but things that have been derived from that. Should we move on to wrap up?
Yes. Let's actually one more question to you.
Okay.
You had such a multicultural experience around the world and different cultures. How do you raise your daughter? Does she have is she experiencing as much as you do when you were growing up with your parents with this descendant sound? How do you raise your daughter in these multicultural experiences, and especially because you're exposed so much to Ukrainian culture as well? How does it impact your everyday life?
Well, okay, so it's an interesting one because, so she's 7, just for reference, and so she's definitely, 7 going on 30, but she also, I think is going to follow a similar track as me. So my parents, obviously, they were overseas. I didn't realize my friends weren't eating couscous as well. That became a thing later on. No one back then knew what couscous was, but I did, because my parents learned all these things along the way and brought it home. And so for me, I don't know when I had the realization that this is a really different kind of thing. Other kids didn't have all this food from the Mediterranean and Africa that they would eat. They didn't go to the the world markets and get food. Those were kind of unique things. And I think my daughter will someday have maybe that same realization because, like she's talking about Ukrainian, like it's a little bit more common now because, she'll go to Ukrainian events with me. She's picked up some Ukrainian words. She has, she has people in her life that she knows and they're Ukrainian, and it's just normal to her. For instance, like we met her violin teacher a year ago, and she's Ukrainian. And so we go there. And anyway, it's, I think one day she'll have that same realization, and it's kind of a fun, interesting one. But I hope it's not, something that's as unique as I felt it was, because, I hope our two nations, there's so much similar to us, like you talking about, being Ukrainian, like when you decide to be Ukrainian, and you will have differences depending on if you're in Lviv or if you're in Kyiv or if you're in Odessa or wherever you're from. You decide to become Ukrainian. That's a lot like America's beginnings, and I think that's so interesting. Because it's different from what maybe a lot of maybe other even European nations have, where it's like, oh, I'm French, and it doesn't matter what the government is at the time. Okay, well, Ukraine is very much kind of following, I think, in a lot of ways, what America followed, right? By choosing to be here, by choosing this track, you were American and you decided not to be British. Anyway, let's move on to lightning round. Sound good?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe, how about you start?
Well, I got to make sure I throw
explain
this
the rules
out
of
there.
engagement, what it is.
All right, so lightning round. What is it? Bliskavka, Kruhala?
Kruhova bliskavka.
There we go. So this is meant to be a round where, if we have a guest on, we'll ask questions, but it's rapid fire questions. So short answers, boom, 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 boom. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to kick us off?
Wow, I was hoping you can do that.
All right. So what would you say is the hardest thing about learning English?
Oh my gosh. The articles, AZ, it is such a foreign concept altogether, and certain vowels. For me, and I've been learning English for over 40 years? No, I'm lying, 30 years. And conceptually, beer, bear, and bear are exactly the same words for me. Like they sound exactly the same, and I'm struggling to pronounce them differently. In fact, my entire family is making fun of me every single time. What about you? What about learning Ukrainian? Like, how difficult is it for you, and what is the most difficult part for you?
That's not a short answer.
Go for it.
So cases, by far cases. So Ukrainian has conjugations like Spanish, with the vowels. Or with the verbs. That's hard as well. But instead of articles, like if you want to say that you give something to this person, you change that person's name to a different form, a different case. Technically, English has those, but they've basically become vestigial. Like we only do it in like pronouns now. But that is such a weird's the wrong word for it, but it's just very difficult because every word can change, and there's patterns, but those patterns are very hard as an outsider to learn. So, all right, let's see.
All right.
Shoes on or shoes off in the house?
Okay, I'm a broken Ukrainian. I'm wearing shoes all the time in the house, but traditionally, shoes off.
I read that was a huge thing in Ukraine. Like you always take your shoes off inside, and it's kind of fascinating to me that I was on ChatGPT and I was like, "What's the if I went to Ukraine, what would be like one thing that would strike me as odd?" And that was like the first thing. I'm like, really interesting. All right.
Question to you, Andrew. What is your favorite Ukrainian event that you have experienced?
Well, Ukrainki was my favorite.
Oh,
did I say it right this time?
Yes.
But I think like second to that, they actually just had a festival in I think January, and that was really cool. There's food trucks, there's music, there's dancing, there's a like a exhibition with Ukrainian artifacts. There were vendors there. There's a beer tent. It was awesome. So
Arizona, keep an eye on that. Once we have more information for the next year, you're welcome to attend it.
All right, let's see. Spicy food. You're in Arizona now. Yes or no?
Oh, yes.
Oh?
I love spicy food. It was a gradual development. I did not have anything spicy when I moved in here, but now it's pretty much everything with cayenne pepper, everything with chilies or jalapenos. All right.
You've acclimated.
What about you? You're from Ohio.
Yeah.
I mean, we are equal in this case.
Yeah, I love spicy food.
How come? Ohio, Midwest.
I know. Well, Ohio doesn't really have spicy food, although we do have our chili. With Cincinnati chili, you can make it spicier, but yeah, it's like maybe the spiciest thing in Ohio, but it's nothing like Arizona food. No, I just came here and I think it's just like as a kid, your friends challenge you, and I just started eating spicy food and never looked back.
All right.
Let's see. Okay. What's your favorite thing about Arizona?
Oh, gosh. So many things that I love about Arizona. In fact, for a while, I moved out of Arizona and lived on the East Coast and came back. I really like the climate, and I like the fact that in winter, you can be swimming in your swimming pool, and 2 hours later, you could be skiing. Love it. I love the nature. When I just moved in here, it took me about 2 years. Every single day, I would be driving, looking around me, looking at this beautiful scenery, and I could not believe my eyes that is actually me living in this world. It was out of this world from where I came from. And now, being able to compare different parts of America, in fact, I really love Arizonians. How open they are, how not pretentious they are, just whatever.
Yeah.
Let's get together, let's meet each other, let's talk about, and I love about Arizona, all of that.
Yeah, that is definitely one of my favorite things about Arizona too. The people here, we're all in some ways kind of immigrants to Arizona, even from like the Midwest. And so I think that drove this part of the culture where we're like, hey, let's meet people, and that, you can go into the grocery store and people start talking to you,
Open-mindedness.
Yeah, that's, while that is probably more an American thing than a Ukrainian thing, like for sure, different parts, like when I lived in Minnesota, that you just didn't do that,
All right, I have a question to you.
Yeah.
Everybody knows about borscht, the traditional Ukrainian food. What would be the borscht equivalent in your life?
So, I mean, I don't know. America's known for hamburgers, but like for me, it'd be that Cincinnati chili. Like, so that's an Ohio thing, but it's also like my family thing. My mom's from Cincinnati. Ohio's kind of a weird melting pot in and of itself. Cincinnati's almost like more southern, to be honest. And so they allow spicy food there. And Cincinnati chili is really kind of cool because it is like, it's a beanless chili. It's spicy. It's spicier than what they make in Texas, but they also serve it different ways. So like traditional is you put a layer of like oyster crackers or spaghetti, then you do the meat, the cheese, onions, and then like coleslaw on top. Mm-hmm. I picked something up in Texas. I actually used Fritos at the bottom. And then now you've got everything. You've got crunch, you've got savory with the meat and the cheese, and then you got the sweet with the coleslaw we use. And it's just like, it's a full meal every bite. It's amazing. All right. So name one Ukrainian tradition you think you wish more Americans knew about.
It is a Christian holiday called Trinity Sunday.
Oh.
And I wish people knew more about that, how beautiful it is. Let me go back a little bit more in Ukrainian tradition. Ukraine is deeply Christian country. But interesting feature about Ukraine that in many holidays, Christian holidays, they engraved the pre-Christian traditions and holidays as well. So they did not deny the previous history, they just combined. And good example would be Trinity Sunday. I remember my grandmother was doing that, and that would be something. She would bring lots of green branches, lots of greenery, flowers from the fields and from the forest, and put it decorated heavily in the house. So when you go to bed and you wake up with the smell of the forest, smell of green leaves, and it feels heavenly. It is June, early June. It is warm, it is nice, and you smell these beautiful flowers, field flowers, and forest above your bed. I wish Americans would know about that, and I wish I would introduce this tradition here for my children to experience it.
It's like after it rains, the desert has a new smell. I love that smell.
Exactly. Well, one more final question before we move on to the next section. I know you now for over a year. Tell us some interesting fact about you that I did not know before.
All right, let's see. Okay. I speak English, and
I know that.
I'm learning Ukrainian. What do you think the second language, I'm not going to say learned, because I really didn't learn it, but the second language I was taught was?
I'm guessing French.
I don't know how to say no in French. Nope.
No, Spanish would be really...
That'd be my third.
Okay, I give up.
So is Russian.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
I can only remember like 4 or 5 words, but yeah. So as a kid, when I lived in Ohio, my dad spoke Russian. He learned Russian in college. He actually went to the Soviet Union in the 60s, which was really, really unique. But he was a journalism student, and he had this opportunity. He went. Got lots of fun, interesting stories from there. He went to, of course, Moscow and St. Petersburg, but also now parts of what is Ukraine. He went to Odessa. He was in Kyiv, all those things. So in Ohio, there was a teacher at the university there, and she taught Russian, and he got to know her, and I sat in some classes.
So having the base from Russian language, was it more difficult or less difficult for you to start learning Ukrainian?
So I wasn't there long enough. We moved away actually right around that time. So I don't think it factored in at all. It's just an interesting little tidbit that I can say a few words, and that comes from decades ago as a kid. But I still have somewhere like old, like he brought things back, and so I still have some of the old books in Russian and old Soviet, like a pen and things like that.
That's cool.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have been able to read any of the words. It wasn't that developed.
All right. Shall we move on?
Yes, please. Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Major developments in Ukraine. Again, we are not a military or political discussion here, and we are not going to talk much about that, but it is really hard to ignore of what is happening in Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly. So I think what we'll... again, we may mention some things. We may talk about how it affects the community, those types of things. Right now, kind of the big news is, that Zelensky and Trump have reached a deal. And there's a political agreement where Ukraine has license to produce Patriot interceptors. And that's basically, those systems help shoot down the ballistic missiles, which is one thing that we're seeing a lot of, where Ukrainian cities are being targeted with these missiles. So now, I do think it's important to note, though, the impact here is that'll take years to really reach where it's meaningfully impactful.
I agree.
So until then, I think Ukraine needs to continue to, get aid from allies and help from around the world to be able to help this.
I agree. What I noticed in the news here, in the news cycle here in the United States, is if there are major developments, we are covering Ukraine, then it goes away, and the assumption is like everything is done there, like everything is good. But the situation on the grounds is so difficult, and it changes not weekly, not daily, but by an hour. And it is very important for every single American who cares about Ukraine to keep close eye on that every single day. We are not there yet, and unfortunately, this war now, the active phase of this war, lasts longer than the Second World War or the First World War. That is the active phase. If we start with 2014, when the annexation of Crimea and Donetsk and Donbass region has occurred, it's been over a decade of active war, and people are dying. And people still need to pay attention. It's not a done deal one way or another.
All right. So the next segment here, we'll do a question from the community. In this case, it's our first podcast, so we don't have any, but we want to just let everyone know you can reach out to us a couple different ways. What's on your mind? What questions do you have? I think it was Olya and Andrew at Gmail, or you can join the Cactus and Tries Up Discord server. We'll try to figure out how to put those in the show notes so that you can click on a link. But yeah, ask us any question. I think that's, we're coming from a place where, we want to be able to help. No question is well, I shouldn't say it that way, but I think we want people to be able to ask honest questions and receive honest answers. And I think that the responses to those bring us together. So definitely reach out.
I absolutely agree with you. One more time, Olya and Andrew at gmail.com. It is OLYA at, one more time, OLYA and Andrew, ANDREW at gmail.com. Another point I wanted to bring is Arizonians, we really appreciate your curiosity. If you learn a little bit more about Ukraine, or if you want to know something about Ukraine and you want to have a separate podcast on that, please write to us about that. And we'll do our best to talk about that. And once you learn a little bit about Ukraine, there is no way you would not fall in love with it.
All right. So speaking of, let's move on to Sunflower or Saguaro.
All right. Let's do that. So many parallels, by the way.
So this is a little game show, short game show that we'll do. And so it's like a quiz. So do you want me to start or do you want to start?
Go ahead.
All right. So we'll say a short thing, like a short phrase. And the person we're quizzing has to say, was that a sunflower for Ukraine or is that a saguaro for Arizona?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, Olya, you're first. Sunflower or saguaro? Green domes.
Green domes?
Green domes. Green roofs.
Oh, saguaro, for sure.
Both.
What?
They're green domes of both. But I thought you were going to say sunflower. Yeah, so Arizona is the only state with copper domes, parts of the roofs above the state houses and the legislature and that kind of thing. But Ukraine is also known for, it's not as known for it, but it does have green domes. I looked it up on like some churches and architectural buildings, right?
Correct. But it is more European thing, not necessarily Ukraine, but yes, I agree with that. All right, Andrew, my question.
Yeah.
Harmony.
Oh, definitely Ukraine. I was sunflowers.
Why?
So Ukrainian language, I learned this, is second to, or purported to be second only to like Italian, and how harmonic it is. And like grammar there, like if you're writing, properly, is like, there's different synonyms, but only one synonym is appropriate because why? Well, it's more melodious. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, let's switch to our final segment. So this is recent and upcoming events. And so again, we want to invite all of our listeners to, to really come out to the events and to participate. These are, come as you are kind of things. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what's happened lately and what's kind of coming up. So we had a big event here earlier at the beginning of the summer. We had 3 defenders from Ukraine come. And they had several speaking tour stops where they went to, the radio stations. They went to some foreign policy summits. They went to veterans groups and really, help people here understand what it's like on the front line. And then we also had kind of recently 2 very different Ukrainian musical acts come to Arizona. So the first was the Ukrainian Bandura's Choir.
What is Bandura?
So it's kind of like a guitar harp hybrid. Is that right? You tell me.
Well, I can give a fun fact.
Okay.
Any guesses how many strings are on harp?
More than 6. I have no idea.
I Googled, so that's why I know. 47. Do you know how many strings are on bandura?
No.
somewhere between 55 and 68. Really complex string instrument to play with, very unique sound. In fact, if you live here in Arizona, go to MIM, Music Instruments Museum, and there is a Ukraine section, and there is bandura there. You'll be able to hear the sound of it. Very unique, very distinctive sound that you cannot mix up with anything else.
This was an interesting event, and we're gonna have to cover it in a different episode. But like the bandura is a traditional instrument, but it also has a lot of history. And I think it started with like back in the Cossacks, that kind of time frame. So Cossacks are kind of like Ukrainian freedom knights is maybe the best way I could tell an American.
It was actually in a republic, in a separate state with the democratic rules and constitution that preceded United States by decades, if not more.
Yeah, exactly. And the bandurists were like the musical accompaniment to these freedom fighters, right? We'll go into it more, but it always reminds me kind of like the Witcher series with Geralt and what's his name, Dandelion.
Yeah, very beautiful, and it was a musical storytelling and preservation of history outside of written records. That's how the history would be carried. Also, side note, old bandurists in 1700s, they were also spies. That was early spy system.
Spice? What do you mean?
Spy.
Oh.
Separate story. We'll talk about that in future, but just keep this in mind. Very interesting.
Yeah, we will definitely have to talk about it because there's the reason they're here is interesting and extremely interesting in culture, but I think let's save that. The other was we had a very different type of genre. We had ginger in
My
town.
favorite.
And ginger, I don't want to put them in a box, but most people would probably think that they're heavy metal. They're from Donbass area, Donetsk,
yes.
And they are very, very good and extremely fun to see live. It has definitely made me binge a lot of their music since watching them live, which is kind of funny that you and I both like ginger. This is a band that I liked well before I knew anything about Ukraine, and I had no idea that they were from Ukraine, and it would just be kind of interesting surprise.
All right. Upcoming events. We have, obviously, the major upcoming event is Independence Day event to mark 35th anniversary of Ukraine's independence. That is done by local Ukrainian community and Ukrainian organizations. If you are interested to learn more about Ukraine, if you're interested to learn music, food, authentic culture, please go on to Cactus and Trizup website. That is www.cactusandtrizup, CACTUSANDTRYZUB.com, and register for it. You will not regret. Very interesting, very beautiful. For those, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say this was also really a great event. My daughter, they had a traditional Ukrainian puppet show. Is that what you call it? I don't know what you call it. But she loved it because she's never seen anything like that before. And it reminded me as being a kid going and seeing different cultural things.
Vertep.
Yeah. Vertep,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But they have music, they have dancing, they have, what do you call it? They have like things you can bid on. They have vendors, they have amazing food. So it's really, really good, really fun time.
Couple more announcements. If you're planning to vote and if you're interested about Ukraine, the volunteers in the community ran a questionnaire for all candidates that are running for the election in November. And if you want to know what is your candidate, what is his or her stance on Ukraine, please visit Cactus and Trizup page as well. We have put there some results of these questionnaires, and hopefully it will be informative for you. And finally, if the story of Andrew has inspired you, there are actually Ukrainian classes that are held by ASU and by a wonderful professor, Olena Tanchik. Go onto ASU and register for the classes. They are not expensive. They are online, and that allows you to do it anytime, anywhere. Super interactive, very interesting. Highly, highly recommending it to you. Yes, Andrew. Looks like you wanted to say something.
Well, yeah, but we'll put it all in the show notes, and you can always look on the website. The Independence Day Festival will be Saturday, August 22nd.
Yes, thank you for reminding.
And then all this is on the website, so it's really easy to find. But I do want to invite everyone to join our Discord again, and participate. Ask questions and bring fun things to Discord. But also we'll be talking about any events, upcoming podcasts. So if you have questions for us, you can either do that in Discord or in the email address. We'll put all this in the show notes as best we can. We got to figure all that out. And then I did want to also say on the surveys, that is both Democratic and Republican. So both sides.
Absolutely, yes.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us on our first episode.
Дуже дякую за те, що ви приєдналися до нас на нашому першому епізоді.
Дуже добре.
Дякую.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you all. Дякую. We will talk to you. До зустрічі. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye.
Щось мріє гай над річкою, неба край, як золото.
On our next episode, we will be having with us in studio Olyana Belashova. She is the head of a software company's European division based out of Ukraine. And she will be coming to America for the very first time. And we thought it would be a very exciting opportunity to see Arizona and America through her eyes and see what that's like.